And we're live.
So, Kyle, you had a topic that I know has been in the news, but I really don't know much about it.
Okay, so I hope I don't get any of this wrong. I've read up on this article a couple times. I listened to some guys on the radio talk about it today on the Jim and Sam show. They were discussing it. This lady, Asia Argento, there. I believe she was married to Anthony Bourdain, and she was, I think, the first lady to come out against Harvey Weinstein and say that he sexually assaulted her back in '97, I think. Well, it turns out that she's a bit of a sexual assaulter herself. There is a picture here. Make sure you click the second one, Chiz. See the one that says that from CNN, because that's got the image of her with the 17-year-old guy in bed with her at the age of 37. Okay, she's topless. I mean, you can only see the top. Let's assume that she's bottomless because he claims she was. And he claims that he sexually assaulted her over a good amount of time.
That he was sexually assaulted by
yes. And so here's a picture of her in bed with a 17-year-old boy. Now, let's stop for a minute and imagine that this is a 37-year-old man in bed with a 17-year-old girl, and things start going a little bit the other way, right?
Mm-hmm.
She paid him off to the sum of around $380,000 to keep quiet. And all of this is coming out now. So a massive dose of hypocrisy right down the middle of the Me Too movement. It's pretty ridiculous, and it's a shame because there's nothing wrong with the Me Too movement. Like we talked about Terry Crews earlier and the struggles that he went through, and you know what a weird position he was put in,
TMZ.
being a man and being questioned about this. You know, being like, whoa, dude, who's sexually assaulting you? And it's like, look, it's not about Law of the Jungle. I can't just beat this guy up. You want me to throw my career away? This guy is basically holding my career hostage while sexually assaulting me in a way that's very uncomfortable for me because I'm a straight married man. And so this lady, like I said, who was one of the first, if not the first, to call out Weinstein. Well, not just as bad, but definitely a hypocrite.
I mean, I think it's totally natural to be less disgusted by an adult woman having sex with a younger boy than it is the other way around. Like, I think that's just a natural thing because men are the pursuers. They're the aggressors more often than not. So I feel like there's just an internal thing that all of us have where we, you know, even though a lot of people are like, it should be treated exactly the same. And like legally, yeah, I agree. But there is something just with the human psyche of like, we all kind of think about it differently, you know, like not to excuse anything she did. That's really terrible. And the fact that like think about the kind of hypocrite you have to be the first one to do this and make it a huge part of your new identity and getting a lot of publicity and stuff from it, and all the while knowing that you paid almost $400,000 to a minor to hide it, like to cover that up.
Yeah,
like that's stunning hypocrisy.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. That's unfortunate.
Jesus, yeah. And like, and I also feel bad for the boys who go through this stuff because they know that society thinks about it that way. And so I think they're even less likely to come forward than anyone else because they're like, people are going to give me a high five about something that to me was very traumatic. Or they'll downplay it to my face and be like, oh, you must have loved it. You got hard. You must have enjoyed it, right? Like that kind of shit.
Yeah.
What did he have any like public statements or did he say anything?
Let's see. It says
he alleged the sexual assault. I'm trying to find like a quote in here.
So she courted him, and
it says the fallout of a sexual battery was so traumatic that it hindered Mr. Bennett's work and income and threatened his mental health, according to a notice of intent to sue that his lawyer sent in November to Richard Hofstetter, Mr. Bourdain's longtime lawyer, who was also representing Miss Argento at the time.
Man, see, that's the so I sympathize with people who have gone through this situation at all, but it's just like that. It's just like that Terry Crews situation, right? So I all I could do is put myself in other people's shoes. So if I'm in that guy's shoes, me as a 17-year-old kid, I probably would never say anything.
You want to hear the creepiest part?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally.
Jimmy Bennett, the young man who was assaulted in what year was it? In 2004, when he was, how old is it? A tiny child. I'm going to call him 8 or 10, was in a movie with her called The Heart is Deceitful. She's known this guy since he was a child. If you scroll down on the New York Times article, you can see just how little he is in that picture.
Oh my God. So this is like grooming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes it, I didn't even realize that. That makes it so much more repugnant.
It does. I mean, I'm not condoning it at all. I don't.
No, of course not.
It's just not a pretty situation, man. I just don't understand the mentality. Like, if you want to have sex with somebody, you're 20 years older, like, how can you not just wait till they're 18? Like, I don't understand that shit.
Exactly. It's like there's way more people who are 18 and up on this planet than 18 and below.
Yeah.
Like,
and I'm not even necessarily saying it's a healthy thing for a 40-year-old to go after an 18-year-old. I'm just saying, just like the legality of it. Like, why are you even messing around with that? The implications of you,
I think it's like a lot of the same shit from Weinstein, where like when these people, they're in an industry, they feel famous, and eventually I bet you're like, I'm making money, people know who I am, I'm untouchable.
Yeah.
I can get away with this. You know, this is a rule for the peons, for the plebs out there.
Right.
You got to wonder if when someone is so open about like something like that, seemingly that she would take a photograph, like, is it that she thought that she was bulletproof, or is it that it's so widespread and common that she thought it would never be an issue?
Could be a little bit of both, actually.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I'd wager a combination.
I always wondered that, like, why, what is the arbitrary number of 18? Like, why is 18 the magical number? You know what I mean? Of consent, where it's not considered public pedophilia.
I would counter with, instead of why 18, what's better than 18? I don't know if I'm just conformist, but it works for me.
Yeah, no, I don't have an answer. I've always just been curious. It's like, was there a reason why, just for purely schematics, is there a reason why it's 18? Like, why did we draw the line there? Like, what was the deciding factor of, like, because you have to draw the line somewhere, of course, but like, where was it deciding, like, all right, 18's it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is totally arbitrary. It could just as easily be 16 or 20. I think the UK is 16, and to them, it's like, oh, 16. Yeah, totally makes sense. Like, that's when you can start drinking or whatever. And
in
like,
some places, it's 12.
Cultural.
In some places, the age of consent is 12 years old, and in some places, it's 21 years old.
All right.
Yeah, the age of consent in. Let me just look up. Oh man, there's a lot. Angola, 12. Philippines, 12. Argentina, Burkina Faso, Japan, Niger, South Korea, all 13.
These are not thought leaders on women's rights, though.
Japan? South Korea?
Oh.
Japan and South Korea, that's a little shocking. But I'm trying to look
carefully.
I'm trying to look up like the first Western nation on here. Okay. Germany, Hungary, and Italy, Liechtenstein, those are all 14.
Jesus.
Estonia, that's 14.
I wonder if there's a caveat in those consent laws where the partner has to be within 4 years or 8 years or 6 years, right. Or can a 50-year-old man pick up a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old, whatever it may be?
All right.
I got no clue.
Yeah.
Isn't there something like there's people that have been prosecuted who were like an 18-year-old kid and a 17-year-old kid? You know, it's like shit like that is ridiculous to me.
That's
kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that's almost always a parent who's upset, who's pressing the action on that.
Right.
Like, it honestly, our cultural perspective of 18 being normal, we're in the minority. Like, not a giant minority, but there's more nations out there with lower than 18 than there are 18.
I don't even know. Maybe it's okay. I think that in the U.S., 16 is pretty common. I just know North Carolina and New Jersey, I think it's 16 for both of those to consent.
Really?
Yeah. And then even below 16, like if you're 14, I think you can consent, but you have to be within 4 years.
And then, of course, in a lot of places, you get married at like almost any age with parental consent.
Yeah, so that's that Bible for you, though.
Yeah, that's fucked. Like there are places where with parental consent, like, I'm trying to think what show I was watching where they had an episode like that. I think it was The Blacklist had an episode like that. Yeah, it was real dark where you found that there were a couple men who had like child brides, and at first you were like, oh, I can't wait till the cops catch them, and then the cops get up and he's like, yeah, I had parental consent. This is my wife. It's totally legal, and they're like, fuck. Haven't seen this one before.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah.
That's why I like when you're an open atheist, like they always say, well, you have no moralities. Where your morals come from? Like you have that argument a lot, and shit like this is like morality is strictly contingent on the society you live in. Like
Yeah.
why? Like it's
Is it though?
yes, 100%.
No,
I
I
think
know.
I think what Arian's saying is like the
Find me an
reception.
objective.
Yeah.
Find me an objective moral standard. That's objectively wrong.
I feel like there's some wrong is wrong, right? Like, you know,
Show me.
if
Pedophilia. We
Okay.
talked about that earlier.
But it's not. Obviously, you can have a 12-year-old bride, and it's okay in some places. That's pedophilia in other places.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's not
legal, but we're
objectively
talking about
illegal.
right and wrong, right? Like there are societies where you could throw acid on a woman and get away with it, but it's still wrong. And it's not just because I'm from America that I think that's wrong. Wrong is wrong. Some of these things are universally agreed upon. When there's a victim in a situation, it's wrong.
So the counter argument to that is it's not wrong to the person that committed the act, or else they wouldn't have done it. It's internally they feel like what they're doing is justified, or else they wouldn't do it. It's right.
That's not true. People do wrong things knowing they're wrong. People steal, people rob, people murder, even though they think it's wrong.
Okay. Do you knowingly do I mean, you can feel like it's wrong, but do you really feel like it's wrong if you're doing it?
I've done things I thought were wrong as a kid.
Yeah. I think so. I think it's a difference. Like, I think Arian, you're talking to it from the perspective of the society that you're currently in isn't going to pass judgment if you engage in behavior that's seen as bad somewhere else. And I think Woody, you're coming at it from like, regardless of society, there are some things that are objectively damaging. So like the example of kids who are molested before or made to participate in sex, you know, at the age of 12 or in Angola or whatever the fuck. We know from evidence that those kids are going to grow up maladapted, more likely to self-harm or harm others. Like they tend to have mental issues with that. So even though it's a societal norm, it's objectively detrimental to the person themselves, which I think you could kind of make a case that, all right, this is something we should avoid on a moral level.
But even then, and this is strictly devil's advocate because I agree it's wrong, but it's objectively detrimental to our standards of what detrimental is, right? Because if you look at like the time, like the Shakespearean times, like pedophilia and homosexuality was prevalent. Like they used to have little boys play girls in a lot of the plays that they had, right? And it's very normal, right? But there was no it wasn't detriment to how they grew up. That's just how they grew up. And the point being is, like, I agree, it's wrong in my worldview, but you can always find a society or a person or somebody else who doesn't think that it's wrong. That's the point. I don't know. The objectivity of right and wrong can never be quantified. How can? But I feel like
I just have to believe in my heart they were like, yeah, fucking these unwilling kids in the ass is wrong, but I'm so glad we get away with it. We've all had our turn. You know, when sophomores pick on freshmen, they know what they're doing is wrong, but they somehow think that because they were picked on the year before, that it's okay, it's justified or whatever, but they know it's wrong. You know, when people steal, they know it's wrong. They just feel like they can get away with it, or that they want it, or that their own desires override with their sense of right and wrong.
So in a couple of those matters, so if I steal and I know it's wrong, right? There are instances where stealing is okay. That's the point. So like,
what if you're stealing some guy's big screen TV, right?
You know that's wrong. But if you're hungry and you haven't had a meal and you stealing a loaf of bread, to me that's not wrong. Right.
I hear you, but let's not do that one, right? Let's not grab the little corner case where there's an argument to be made. Someone, you're stealing my flat screen TV, right? I worked for it, you didn't, but you want it, so you just take it, and you know it's wrong, but your desires outweigh your conscience.
Right. So in that essence, like you talk about me or society?
The guy who does it.
The guy who does it.
The guy who does it says, you know what? I know this is wrong, but I want it. But I can get away with it.
Robin Hood, right? So I grew up with cats like this, where they feel underprivileged. They grew up with nothing, no chances, no breaks. Mom and dad was in and out of prison, whatever the case may be, drug infested neighborhood, gang infested neighborhood, and they go into a neighborhood and they take a guy's big screen. It's like he has all the opportunity in the world. Like this is what he gets. This is my due. Is it right? Not to me, but to him, he's justifying in his head. Is like fuck that dude. Like that. It's literally, you cannot quantify right and wrong because it's a subjective standard. If he felt like it was wrong, he probably wouldn't partake in it. A lot of people feel justified in their crime. You can find instances in fringe cases where yeah, I'm wrong and I'm doing it and I know I'm wrong, or no, I deserve this TV.
See, I feel like this is part of the reason I think that religion itself was kind of instrumental in creating human civilization, the groundwork, because it gave that structure of like, this is objectively wrong. You can't do this or you can't do that. And I think to your point earlier, maybe we've outgrown that in a lot of ways. Yeah. But without religion, there really isn't an objective standard. And I think that's Arian's point of like, you can appeal to things. And so what I would say is like, instead of trying to propose a system of objectively right and wrong, you kind of try your best. It's not set in stone, black and white, there's gray area, but you try and strive for something that is always beneficial instead of detrimental. So you would use a standard of judgment like, okay, this behavior of marrying and having sex with 12-year-olds, looks like this is really damaging to people in the long run. Higher rates of suicide, higher, suicidal ideation, self-harm, things like that. Okay, that's detrimental. We can't say it's objectively wrong because, we're not using a holy book to do it, but it's still wrong in that way.
Right. And in which case I would 100% agree with, right? Because I feel like you can gather data on child brides after 15, 20, decades, whatever the case may be, and see where they fall. And you say, okay, you're more likely to have emotional issues. You're more likely. Then you can kind of quantify it in that aspect. But even then, we're still looking at it through our Western worldview of you go to school, you get a job, you get married, you have 2.5 kids and a dog and a white picket. Like we're still looking at it through our worldview, which is biased, and there's no way around that. There's just no way around that. Like because
that's true.
The objectivity comes from for religious people, it comes from a higher power. So if you're appealing to that higher power, there's literally no it's on a shaky foundation because there's no evidence for it. That's the whole point. Like I agree we can come to consensus, but this is why when we talk about like politics in today's world, people are like, oh, the PC culture is ruining and blah 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 blah. I disagree. I used to be really firm on this, where I was like, you should be able to say what you feel because political correctness is ruining freedom of speech. I used to be on that side, but then I kind of had a change of worldview where I felt like political correctness is just it's an attempt at civility in a world where goodness is subjective, right? So that's why I feel political correctness is actually an attribute for society rather than a hindrance, and it kind of falls in line with what we're saying. Does that make sense?
I mean, I definitely disagree on the political correctness thing, but your religious point, I understand, like, because like that's what's so hard for atheists, agnostics, whatever, to argue for any standard of objective morality. Like, you really can't do it. Like, all you can say is this seems bad or this feels wrong, but without that concrete set in stone 10 commandment or whatever the fuck it is in your religion, like, that's really all it comes down to is I feel this is wrong, or this has been proven to be detrimental or beneficial.